Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Thursday. It's October 28th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And I thought I'd show you the daily chart again. This almost looks like a spiking channel. Look at this big spike up, and it looks like we've gone into this channel. I'm not ready to call this channel yet, but it really looks like a strong possibility to me. And I mean, this market is just crazy with all the negative news laying, flying around and floating around. This thing just continues to go higher and higher, and this has been a really impressive rally here. I mean, I mean, 43.15 till we're close to four. I mean, that's almost a 300 point rally in no time, and that's what I tried to explain to you about these big sell-offs. Every time we run into one of these, the rally is we rally out of there. We rally out of there strongly. And a lot of this could have been short covering for people trying to pick tops as we went higher. And now we're just kind of getting back into the trend again, but it's continuing rather strongly. We had a pretty good sell-off late yesterday, which looked like we may have topped out, but we do have a double top in place now, and we could turn down from here, but I'm not really. I'd like to see it bounce off this line another time or two to prove it to me that we're in a spiking channel here, but it sure looks like one. So just be aware that this market may not be done to the upside. We still have room. There was prices had to really fight to get above this high. Once they did, we pushed on up but we found resistance up here. It was really tough going up in this area right in here. So a lot of selling coming in. So that could continue. But if we bounce off this line and continue to go higher, this is a very strong possibility. This is a channel here. So just pay attention to it, and we'll see. We'll look tomorrow and see what it looks like tomorrow. But let's go to the daily chart or the intraday chart. Okay, here we are back at our 2000 tick chart. This is the way I had this earlier, but I believe this to be incorrect. It still looks like prices are playing off this line, but if you drop this down here to these closes, and you can see it still bounces at that same place, and let's move this up here, and you can see it does tend to fit better. And notice how we didn't get back up to the highs this time. We came off the lows and we just couldn't get back up there, and then finally prices sold off. Well, honestly, this looks like it's more correct here than the way I originally had it. So this is the way I'm going to leave it. But I didn't really find this until we turned down here right around lunchtime. So you probably wouldn't have found this. Maybe some of you saw it before I did. Every now and then, and notice there's two perfect legs there as well. We had two perfect legs down and then two perfect legs up. But every now and then somebody will send me their chart. One of our students or people that are follow along, and they'll see something I didn't see, and in the end I like theirs better. So it doesn't mean that I'm always the one that's 100% right. I do get it wrong sometimes. So, but anyway, just trying to get this right here. Let's back out here or zoom in here, and we'll go through these trades, and I'll show you what I saw. I looked for a measured move here too, and you can see we pretty much got one there, and then we actually pushed on again and went further down, but I think that's just because we were coming back to this trend line. And I do believe that looks more correct than what I originally had earlier today, so that's the way I'm going to leave it. But really what we had this spike up in a channel. We spiked up. It's not a real strong spike, but we had this steeper channel and then laid over into this flatter channel. And that's pretty common. I thought for a little bit we were going to sell on off here, but no, it bounces and we continued higher again. And they really, really tried to take it higher right in here, but just couldn't get it up there. So this prices were really struggling to go higher here. And then finally the buyers just gave up, and boom, and you got these two legs down, and then slowly they come back again. It starts going higher again. We still found the resistance at that same place once again, but eventually they failed it out this low side and ran it back up again, and that's pretty common. So um, people always think when they fail out these tops and turns down that, yeah, I'm getting short here, and all they do is get trapped into the short side and they take it higher again. Or vice versa in a downtrend. Sometimes they'll fail it out the top side and trap everybody in and then let it drop again. So just be aware of that. But let's back out here. We'll go through the trades and we'll wrap up our week here. 7 o'clock came back over in here. We did have a second entry here. Unfortunately, it's not the signal bar doesn't qualify on my chart. If you had a good signal bar there, by all means take that trade. There's a higher low here that I liked as well. But again, signal bar is horrible. And then finally we get a failure. Notice the new low. You get a first entry short, a second entry short. So when it breaks higher one tick above this bar, it's a failed second entry short, and that's a great place to go long. There's even one more little jog back here that gives it a higher low, but you got to go long right into almost a double top there, and that's usually not a good idea. This is definitely going sideways here. So that was a little bit of a concern too with this resistance right here, but with this trap you're probably going to push on up, and you can see that was a quick easy scalp. It comes back and gets your runner if you keep your runner close, and then boom, it goes right where you thought it was going to go. So it's just part of the game, and sometimes you get a runner, sometimes you don't. So but anyway, we pull back here and we get a first entry, then we make a higher low and you get a second entry right here. I like that trade right off the key entry point. Look at that key entry point. It's been holding all through the overnight into the open now, and if you wait a few minutes, then you get a failed second entry short and another second entry long because there's a new swing high, first entry, second entry. This one is real close to being blue. I marked it green because if this would have broke on higher, I'd say take this trade, but when this doesn't break higher right here, it gives you that tiny bar, or that bar with a tiny body or no body, and so it makes it a little bit congested looking. So but this trend line has been true all day. If you let it break higher and maybe drop a limit order a couple of ticks back and you get yourself plenty of room before you can get out here, you may take that trade. You may take it anyway, but that congestion there, I mean, it could have easily turned and had a break there and then ran to a new high and been over with. But yeah, the trend has been strong here, and this trend line's well proven. So, of course, all trend lines eventually come to an end. But usually what you hope is you don't get a setup at the trend line where you're going to get the break, and that's usually there's some kind of clue that that's the case, and once we come back here, we don't get a setup at the trend line on this one that fails because that's bar's too bearish. Now it is a reversal, but this isn't the spot you want to go on reversal right into a double top there. So and you can see it quickly failed. It actually tried to go higher one more time and before it failed, and then it gives you well, we'll talk about that when we get there. But we already talked about that trade, and then we come back and you get a first entry and then your second entry, and that's just congestion. You definitely don't want to go long or short there. And then you get a little failed breakout of this tight channel, and it bounces right off the key entry point with a very bullish bar. I like going long there. It's a little aggressive because you generally want to wait on the higher low, which comes here, and another good trade. And then of course I just talked about the failure, but you got to go long right into the highs of what looks like a range here. And so I'd be real careful. I wouldn't take that trade. If you did, you probably got burned there. Then we work back and you get another little failed break lower that's temporary, and you get that nice bullish bar. There's still plenty of room to get out. I like going long there. That's the first close outside the channel, and you can see there was just no real good setup here where you got the break, and usually that's what you hope for. Very rarely will you get a perfect setup and then get a failure and a break. There's some more clues here too. Notice how we've been touching the high of the range each time, and then we didn't quite get there here. Then we get a little further away here, and then this last push up, it can't even get above the last highs hardly. Those are clues that we're about to get that this thing is rolling over and that we're running out of steam here, at least temporarily, if nothing else, or at least there's some strong resistance here. So be real careful. The higher we get, the stronger the resistance seems to be getting here. So, but of course, we drop out of there again, and you try to go higher, and then you get a first entry. You try to go higher again, then you get a second entry short. But we still don't have a new high, and this has been a pretty good trend, so I don't think I'd be looking for shorts yet. And, of course, you get this reversal right here, and it gives you a chance to go long above the EMA and right above the low of the range. And that turns out to be a really nice trade. There's a higher low here, but I don't like entering this one because you've already got a couple of bars side by side. I don't like entering that one on an engulfing bar. So you really need to let this one close, and it closes right in the high, and that's not a good place to go long. It works, but it's just, I don't think it's worth risking. And it takes off, and we really don't get another chance to enter. There's a failed second entry short here, but you're you're away from the resistance that should act as support. So at the very minimum, you'd want it to come back to here, but really you want that to be off the EMA, and it just doesn't do it. So anyway, there's no setup up through here. Then you get two legs back. You can see we don't quite get two legs, but when it makes a second entry right here, but not a very good setup. You might have said, hey, that's a real small bar, but it almost closes right in its middle. So even though it's only like 4 ticks, it's very low risk, but unfortunately you get a loser there, and I'd just wait on a better setup right there. And then of course you make the double bottom, and so that's basically a higher low, and look at the support you're getting right at the EMA. So you may take that trade. It's still a little aggressive. I marked it green because it looks congested, but what's happening is you still got some momentum from the downside, but there's not enough to get through the EMA, and the buyers are starting to come back in, and they just haven't really, it probably took this next bar for the buyers to start to come back in, and that's too late to enter here based on the way we trade. So runs back up, and then you come down and you get a first entry, and you get a second entry. It's kind of the same thing we saw over here, except now you're below the EMA, so just sit tight. I didn't draw the trend channel on this one. And you get that. It's basically a repeat pattern of this almost. It looks a little different because the two legs down are a little different, but it makes that same little double bottom. Although this one breaks higher, that's a good sign. When it breaks lower and this one turns higher, and they really ran the stops here. And notice you got a new low here, and then you get a first entry, second entry, and this is a little failed break out the upside. It's not a good idea to pick tops, whatever, but this is clearly a range across here, and you got a little room back to the end. So you may take that trade. Turns out to be a great move. I don't think you want to enter down here. There's a lower high here, but it's not back to the EMA. You've had a pretty strong move. And I'm going to move this just a second. And I want to talk about this because this came up on the forum today. And I think I'd drawn a channel like this, and somebody else had drawn it like so. And so that made them, there'd already been a break and a new low, so then that made them very leery of a second entry. But what you got here is you've really got two trends. You've got the real tight one that I just showed you, and then you got the one the way I drew it here. And so they both are probably correct because there's trends within trends, and ranges within trends and trends within ranges, and so this stuff all goes on at different levels. So generally when you get a bunch of bars that are consistently down like that, you probably have a tighter channel in there. And so by this you get a break, but you still don't have a new low. Of course you get a second entry here, but there's no trigger because look how bullish that is. So there's no reason to go short right there. And in fact, when it fails, you may go long. And the only reason I didn't mark that trade as a long trade blue is because you're not back, you're right underneath the former support, and it could act as resistance and trap you and turn prices back down. It doesn't in this case, and if you want to be a little aggressive, you probably take that trade because it is a reversal, and it's probably going to trap some shorts. But this bar wasn't good enough to probably fool too many people, and it didn't go very high. It did push on up, but notice how it doesn't. Usually when you get a trap, it'll notice how that rockets up after it broke lower right there. That's the way traps do. Generally when you get those traps that are really good, prices take off fast. Like right here, here's a long trap. Notice you got your first entry and second entry, and it fails, and look how it rockets down because they're running everybody's stops. And when it moves real quick like that, so it really struggled to get up through here. So not a lot of smart traders were interested in that, and that's why I make it green too, because it's not the ideal setup, but it is a failure. Then of course we drop down. We try to go higher once. We try to go higher twice, and we bounce down here. I don't think you want to try to be picking any longs yet. It is down here at a measured move. If you took that trade, the problem is it's an inside trade. When you get that big bar, the next bar is an inside bar like that, and then again, you might take that trade. You could argue for it to be green. I'm not crazy about it. Would have been an easy scalp, but then it fails and turns down, and that's a great place to enter short, and that's what a good trap looks like. Boom. And then of course we bounce here, and that's when I corrected my trend line, and it seemed to fit better, so I like it right here and left it here. But you might even take that long. The problem is that's a really strong move down, and you already had to adjust your trend line most likely, and so it's probably not a great place just to pick a short. You probably want to get a higher low, and you just don't get one here. But notice you get a first entry and you make another leg up. Actually, you make a new low right here and you make a move up, and then you get a first entry, second entry, and you get a failed second entry right at the EMA. So you may take that trade. It's another failure. I put this arrow here. I didn't mark it green or red because it looks congested, and you can see how the support is acting as resistance, and you don't have much room there. And it could still continue to act as resistance and turn prices down. And this is another one where you have that tighter trend coming up here. And so you're probably going to try to make a new high, but it doesn't have to go very far, and then it could turn down. And this trend channel has not been proven. I still think it's correct, but at this point, you don't have enough evidence to know for sure if it's going to go higher or not. It does. And then you get a close outside basically right here. And you can actually see it couldn't get high, couldn't get all the way back to the highs. Then it gets a close, and then it comes up, and it can't even get back to the midline. Then it closes outside. So really, you get a break and two legs up, and it turns down right at the previous resistance up here. You get a lower high here, but it's right into the EMA. It's right into the midline of this. This has been a pretty strong trend, so we could turn back up again. We did come off the low of what looks like this trend channel, so we could be heading higher, and you may get trapped right there. So I didn't mark that one. The true failure came right here, right off the EMA, really bearish bar actually. Again, it's late in the day, and it's not ideal type of reversal where you're looking for one, but you can see that acting as resistance again, and you may take that one. And then you actually come back and you make another test of this underside and get that huge bearish bar. I marked it green too, and the only reason I didn't make either one of these probably blue is because it's so late in the day. And this is just a first entry here. It does look like it tried to go higher, but this didn't break higher before it. Actually, you would have already been in this trade before this bar even completed. So, um, but it's just so late in the day. But that's such a bearish bar on a test there. And look at the stem up there when it tried to go higher. I guarantee it trapped some traders. Um, and it does. You would have got a scalp out of it, nothing more than that. And again, uh, if you're going to trade this one, it went higher first. I like trading it when it came out the other side. And there's not a lot of room down here, so you got to have room to get out. So at the very least, if you traded this, you might let it break lower first and then drop your limit order back in here to give you room to get out. So that's another thing to think about. I think you get out either way, but um, you probably either want to trade that as an engulfing bar, and that would be one that might trap people, or you're going to have to let it do what I talked about, use a limit order. It's one of the rare cases we might use a limit order to try to get in a trade. But I think you're better off just to not take either one of those, because really the market's showing a lot of indecision right there. So I marked them green because I figure somebody's going to ask me about them if I don't talk about them and mark them. So, but anyway, that's what I saw today, and that's going to wrap up our week. No chart lessons on Friday, but we'll be back Monday to start all over again. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else. I think that's it for today. So yeah, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it Monday. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next